part of me wants to try to rectify this situation. Some girls will think that because math is not for them, they then discard all of the STEM topics and decide to get themselves from a lot of opportunities in life. I think it's very liberating for people who had squiggly careers. That's something they should be ashamed of, and that it's something that, in a way, use your transferable skills, show your resilience. I think it's very powerful to take your learnings and then bring it to a different sector, a different organization, so that you can actually make a difference and have an impact. I think for me it's the importance of STEM allowing you to be an agent in change, including in sustainability. Diversity is key because we want young people to see what they can be, and if they don't feel they belong, they will not think that they can start a career as a scientist, as a biologist, as a tech entrepreneur. We plan to do more in the next couple of years. We've secured funding for the STEM Ambassador Program to have more targeted intervention where we want to have an impact and go out and try to find where it's difficult to go. And it felt, really good, and I thought I made the right choice.
Awesome.
Whenever I got up in the morning, I thought, I know exactly why I'm going to work today, and that felt extremely good.
Every leader has a story to tell, and the Safe Leader podcast uncovers the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. Join me, your host, Mark McBride-Wright, as we hear from business leaders, academics, entrepreneurs, and agents of change as they share their journeys of innovation, resilience, and transformation. Together, we explore how they embrace the principles of safe leadership, sharing, acting, feeling, and empowering to create safer, more inclusive environments for everyone. Hello, welcome to the next episode of the Safe Leader podcast. I'm your host, Mark McBride-Wright, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Séverine Trouillet, who is the CEO of STEM Learning. So Séverine is the CEO of STEM Learning, the UK's largest provider of STEM education and career support, dedicated to improving young people's opportunities through teacher training, student enrichment activities, and employer engagement, including the STEM Ambassadors Programme. With a background as a senior leader in tech at Dassault Systèmes, she focused on education and workforce development in industries like aerospace, energy, and manufacturing. Séverine's earlier career spanned public affairs and stakeholder engagement roles across Europe, working on sustainable development and corporate transformation. She holds advanced degrees from LSE, La Sorbonne, and Sciences Po, along with a diploma in business sustainability management from Cambridge. In her spare time, she enjoys running, hiking, reading, and mentoring underrepresented communities in STEM. She's also a board member of the Franco-British Data Society and a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts. Séverine, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you, Mark. I'm delighted to be here. I really admire your work, so it's a pleasure for me to be here today.
Oh, thank you. And we were just saying on the call there, and when we first connected a moment ago, this is actually the first time we've spoken, isn't it?
Exactly.
Which is, I think, when Yvonne, your predecessor, moved on, because she's now actually at the Institution of Chemical Engineers, which is my professional engineering institution. I'm still to meet her, actually. Don't think we've met yet. So I really wanted to connect with whoever was going to lead up STEM Learning, because I'm surprised it's taken us this long to connect, actually.
I think we're very close, but through our networks and connections, and also a spirit of ideas.
Yeah.
So it was meant to happen.
Absolutely, because I mean, when I was a graduate, it was when I was a graduate, 15 years ago or something. I did STEM ambassador training. It was part of our graduate recruitment process. It wasn't part of the graduate recruitment process. It was part of, once we became a graduate, it was something that you were tasked with doing, and obviously growing equal engineers, a lot of the companies that we work with, it just rolls off your tongue. Oh, we've got
Hmm.
STEM ambassadors. Oh, our organization, we've got STEM ambassadors, etc. So I want to dig into that in this chat together. But before we get to that part of your career and that business and
Hmm.
what you do there, I love knowing about the people that are on the podcast, people who we're talking to, and understanding your history and what inspired you and what took
Hmm.
you to where you're at now. So if we wind back the clock and go back in time, what did you want to be when you were older? Are you doing now what the young Séverine thought she would be doing at this stage?
Yeah. So I think as a young child, probably wanted to be a teacher because that's the first thing that you're exposed to. And I remember putting all the teddy bears in my room in order,
Yeah,
and talking to them and telling them, what they should learn that I just learned myself at school. So I think that was my first inspiration, finding the teachers so great to hear and to be with them, to learn every day. So I think that was my first career. But I think when I grew up, I was also inspired by my parents, who were both in the medical profession. They were a doctor and a nurse, and then my mom became a nurse, teaching to other nurses. But unfortunately, math was not my forte. So I think it took me away
okay.
from the STEM topics, and I think now part of me wants to try to rectify this situation. For some girls will think that because math is not for them, they then discard all of the STEM topics and decide to get themselves from a lot of opportunities in
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
So I think that has probably formed, a lot of the decisions I've made in my career later in life. But I was also very passionate as a teenager, about geopolitics and how decisions made by states and government can change people's lives. So that's
yeah.
where I ended up studying politics, wanting to
Right.
work, in the public realm. And that's why my first job was with a French MP. I then worked with the UK local government, in local authorities, in Quangos, because I was interested in, if you use the public purse wisely, you can literally change people's lives. But
Mm.
then working in politics, you also realize that organizations and companies have a role to play.
Hmm.
And that's where I really started my career in public affairs, which means working with companies and policymakers, trying to make sure you have a very informed debate and you make the best decisions in policy. And for me, that was a revelation because I realized that companies can also be corporate citizens, they can be active in supporting the public good. And I think that's where my STEM journey really actually started, because most of
Okay.
the companies I was working with were in cosmetics, in engineering, infrastructure, energy. And it was really interesting to see how, with data, with information around trends in businesses, with decisions you can make to make your operations more sustainable, you can have STEM influence the lives of people in a positive way.
So
So I remember,
did that make you then want to do the so I just looked at the title of your masters, the business sustainability management
yes,
course that you did at Cambridge, was that a kind of you wanted to dig deeper into this, so you took that time out
absolutely.
to do that?
Absolutely. And I think for me, it's the importance of STEM being allowing you to be an agent in
Ah,
change, including in sustainability. And that's why I worked with a lot of different industries. I remember working with cosmetic companies, for instance, when I was in Brussels. And it was interesting how they wanted to show, what they were doing against animal testing on cosmetics, and the work of the scientists there, as well as how they use science to substitute some ingredients because some had been proved to be,
ah,
carcinogens. So it was very, for me, it was very clear that science can power sustainability. And
that's-
from there, I wanted to work in health, in tech, because I know that that was the way to change and transform.
wow. So what brought you? I've heard this phrase recently about a squiggly career.
Yes.
And so what brought you to? I can see how what you've done then would naturally lead you to, with a bit of thought, lead you to what you're doing now. But it doesn't, it doesn't feel like it's the obvious route, to of ascension,
Yes.
with the pathway that you
Yes.
were on. So what did the opportunity come up, the job role come up, and you thought, oh wow, that
Yes.
sounds interesting. Let's look at that. Or were you approached for the role, headhunted? Like
Yeah.
what brought you to STEM learning? What?
So first, Mark, you're spot on around squiggly career. It's something that I came across, a year ago, and I saw that's exactly what happened to me,
Yeah,
what I wanted it to be, and I think it's very liberating, for people who had squiggly careers. That
yeah,
it's not something they should be ashamed of, and that it's something that, in a way, use your transferable skills, show your resilience. And I think because I'm very curious, I've always wanted to learn from somewhere and take that knowledge from somewhere else. I think it's very powerful to take your learnings and then bring it to a different sector, a different organization, so that you can actually make a difference
yeah,
and have an impact, which is, we were talking about STEM learning and STEM ambassador, which is, I think, key for me. It's why do I do a job is because I want to have an impact. I want there to be a transformation. So I think that's the why has been the driving force.
okay,
And I think I was already on that journey about what can you do to still go back to that public good. If you're not working for a public organization,
yeah,
how else can you do that? So my last job before joining STEM Learning was with Dassault System, a very innovative software company,
yeah,
which does 3D modeling, working on platforms to have one single source of truth across different ecosystems. It was very innovative, and so I was doing public affairs there, but also was leading the education business, making sure
all
we
right, wow,
empower the workforce of the future by providing more software, because these young people need to be ready for the world of tomorrow.
yeah,
And virtual twins, 3D design, 3D modeling is something that is going to help with sustainability, with innovation, with the fast pace of change. So when I was there, I realized actually if there's one lever that can help with speeding innovation while improving people's lives and also their prospects is education.
yeah.
And that's when STEM Learning called, and so
Wow.
they were headhunting for a new CEO, and I think I had no option but to say yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. And so what? So then, bring us up to the present, or the not so distant past to the present now,
Hmm.
and the future in this context of STEM learning. What was it like when you arrived? What did you pick up, and what's been what have you had? What are you going through now? What
Yeah,
are the current challenges and opportunities, and because we've had a change in administration and government
yeah,
since you took over. Um, yeah, just talk us through your life
yeah.
in the last 18 months.
Yes. So when I arrived, I was very impressed by the passion of the people who are actually making STEM learning what it is today. All our colleagues are driven by this will to really improve the life of young people. And I think
Yeah,
it's quite rare to have in an organization every single person who knows exactly what the mission is and what they're driving to do. And whoever you talk to, you know that they're driven by this passion, that they know their why, and they're working every day tirelessly for this objective. So I think it's quite unique. And it felt, really good. And I thought I made the right choice.
oh, awesome.
Whenever I got up in the morning, I thought, I know exactly why I'm going to work today. And that felt extremely good. So
Amazing.
having a purpose-driven, organization makes the whole difference.
Yeah,
And I felt like it was a luxury because I'm, at a point of my career where I could say, this is where I want to work.
yeah,
And I was thinking of my younger self, because sometimes you just need to find a job
yeah.
and you're not sure about, what you're going to find there and what is actually driving you. But when you can reach that stage, it feels really good. So that's the first thing I thought when I arrived in this job.
Give
I,
us an idea then about the scale, the impact, like the size of the organization, the number of young people's lives that you touch, the number of activity that your work helps underpin through the broader network of STEM ambassadors. I'll admit, outside looking in, I'm not. I hear STEM ambassadors mentioned, and I know that STEM learning is the overarching umbrella around it. But I don't know the scale and size and how many schools you're touching, and what the age group is that you target, and how many organizations you're involved. I don't have that level. It'd be
Yeah,
really interesting to know.
very
Is
happy
it
to share.
is it I always find that, is enough being done? And I guess the answer is no. We need to just always do more. Um, and therefore, like, do you have the capacity to be the place that's doing all of it, or is there a? I'm really interested.
Yeah.
There's a lot of. I remember the Royal Academy quoting a statistic once that there's about 600 organizations or projects or initiatives doing stuff in the primary/secondary space when it comes to STEM engagement. And so part of me is because we do stuff as well as eco engineers through funded partnerships with other organizations. I just wondered if how fractured it all is, and fragmented, not fractured, that sounds negative, how fragmented some of it can be. Are we doing a bit of a disservice actually to what, and we need more cohesion for having greater impact?
Yeah, I must say, Mark, it's the first thing I realized about the STEM landscape when I joined is the number of organizations, and we all have our space and our role to play.
Yeah.
But when I put myself in the shoes of a teacher or a funder or an employer trying to understand, how they can help, they
Yeah.
can find it confusing. And so I
Yes.
think it's very important for all these organizations to explain their why they're doing this and the impact they're having. And I would say, again here, the word for me is the impact. If you can measure and explain how you have transformed lives, what you have supported and helped with, then it's very clear, where people need to invest their time, their money, their resources. So I
Yeah.
think it's making a lot of sense to try to be very clear when you explain what you do as a STEM organization. What is the impact you are going to make. So when it comes to STEM learning, and also, I want to come on to the challenges because, it's been an organization going for 20 years, but
Yeah.
change is more rapid than ever. So STEM Learning is an organization of 160 people strong at the moment,
Wow.
and we are working across primary and secondary children up to the age of 19
Okay.
and young students. And we've got three main ways of improving lives through STEM education. The first one is to support teachers with their continuous professional development, what we call CPD.
Yeah.
So usually teachers teach science, computer science, but many of them are non-specialists. There's currently in the UK a crisis around teacher retention and teacher recruitment. So you will find that it's not uncommon that a PE teacher, physical education teacher, will have to teach physics or math or biology. And so
So bad.
what we do is we support with CPD so that they have the confidence they need in the classroom, because
Okay.
if they feel confident, then they can inspire young people. And we've had several studies showing that if you go on CPD with STEM learning, you're 150% more likely to stay in the teaching profession
Oh,
because
wow.
you are gaining in confidence, you do peer-to-peer learning. But of course, the challenge is attached to that because we need to know who pays for CPD. So up until now, we had a lot of funding from government, but as you know, there are a lot of strains in education across the board,
Yeah.
and this is changing. So the question is, how do we finance this CPD for it to be sustained and sustainable?
Yeah.
But we believe that this is a key way to help because I don't know if you heard of the multiplier effect, but if you support a teacher, if they're confident in front of their classroom, if they keep their knowledge and their skills development fresh, then they can inspire up
Mm-hmm.
to 100 students per
I didn't know
kilometer.
that. Okay,
And
I didn't
so,
know that. No.
when
Okay.
they do that, it's worth investing in teacher
Yeah.
CPD and teacher support, because they inspire the young people. We have studies proving that when a teacher goes on CPD, the attainment of their pupils improves.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Their motivation improves. So it's absolutely key. So this is the first pillar. The second pillar we have is the STEM ambassador
Mm-hmm.
program, as you say. So this is a program that's been running for 20 years, as you mentioned earlier. It's funded by the agency UKRI,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea there is to have role models that are going into schools that illustrate the curriculum for a teacher and help address issues around career advice, career support, and it's making STEM fun, really. Is to
Yeah.
help develop a love for STEM. So you will have different backgrounds. I think we are representing roughly the diversity we see in the UK society,
Okay. That's good.
with half of our STEM ambassadors, or a bit above, are female.
Mm-hmm.
70% are from ethnic minorities, and we've got in general a good representation of those who are usually underrepresented in STEM,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
makes me think sometimes that we put the burden on these audiences to try to redress an issue. But in general, diversity is key, because we want young people to see what they can be. And if
Yes.
they don't feel they belong, they will not think that they can start a career as a scientist, as a biologist,
Mm.
as a tech entrepreneur. So the second pillar for us is key, because we need to make sure that industry steps in,
Mm-hmm.
goes into the classroom, explain, what are the expectations for innovation in the future. And it
Yeah.
actually also helps with teachers, because when you think about it, most teachers have gone to school, to
Mhm.
university, and then back to school. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't expect them to know about, what it means to be an engineer today. When I speak to, our engineering sister organizations and professionals, they tell me about the amount of different jobs you can do as an engineer, and it's
Yeah.
not anymore, the hard hat, the
No, of course
high
not.
vis vest. You can be working in cybersecurity as an engineer. You can be working on climate change topics. It's hugely varied. And if role models don't go into schools and explain that variety, the other source of inspiration for children and young people is parents, and parents don't know.
Yeah.
They've got some very specific ideas of what a STEM career is. And I would they, why would they? So it's very important that we have these external interventions, and
Yes.
also that these are sustained, because when you were a STEM ambassador, you probably went several times to the same place, or try to follow a cohort. And this is the secret, because if you
Yeah.
do something once, it
Yeah.
doesn't imprint on young people's
You
minds.
need
You
it
have to
multiple
go
times.
and go back and do things slightly different, but have this, this consistency.
Yeah. That. Yeah. They were two things that I sort of found. I mean, it's been a long time since I did any through STEM learning, like in front of the classroom. I've done a couple of things since then, but using different resources. The the one thing I found that now looking back on it, I realised we should have done that a bit differently from a socioeconomic perspective. When I did the STEM outreach at one of my employers, was we went to like the same schools, which is fine. It's good to build up a relationship, keep going to the same schools. But they were schools where members of staff had their kids, and some of the
Yes.
schools were the private schools, etc., in the local area, and it was just easier because we had a connection with a teacher, and it was just easier to get in. So looking back on it, kind of think, well, I remember hearing that for every private school that you go to, you should try and engage with like the local state school or
Yes.
one of the local schools and as well, to try and talk about equity, and if you're offering work shadow days, well, is there a bit of nepotism there in the sense that like why does your neighbour's daughter
You're
get a chance to have
absolutely,
a work
absolutely
shadow
right.
day?
Yeah,
just
actually, it's spot
because,
on.
could you do a favor? Or like, well, then if you are going to do that, well, can you then make it something where you bring in a student from the local school where there's no connections, and then the teachers, you start scaffolding that connection
Yes.
locally with groups that don't typically engage. And I found well, there's another point I want to mention in a moment actually. The what I found when doing the engagement, so your point on diversity is really interesting. I do think the engineers, and it's usually the graduates or even apprentices, I guess, they do end up feeling like it's them then that have to be out there doing the inspiration stuff. But then it depends on middle management and their superiors. Like, do they see that as being fully aligned and what the sector needs, or is it a distraction and are they away from their day job, and therefore there's a perceived penalty paid because they've not been present? I also found, and this is something that I think we're maybe not doing enough of, and now is the time to do it. Maybe we've gone, I don't know. This is just my view. I found there's quite a lot of male engineers in their 50s odd, that tranche of the engineering population that are going to retire in the next 10 to 15 years, 5 to 15 years, know that change needs to happen, can see a diverse cohort coming through the ranks, but don't feel like they're allowed or that they should be the ones being in front of the students in the schools because, what have I got to share? How am I inspiring? And actually, it's them that have got the experience, the depth of experience that can then come alive when doing the STEM engagement. So, does it? I don't know. It's really interesting when we work with businesses. It's like, well, are you letting this tranche of the workforce go out and be, or do you think through your STEM ambassador program it just has to be the graduates and those that look different from the majority?
Yeah.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, Mark, there's no rule, and I think we've got, in terms of scales, you were asking about, how many people we touch. We've got 30,000
Wow.
STEM ambassadors registered in the UK, and on a regular basis, 14,000 are active.
Oh, that's
So it's a
brilliant.
lot of people going out. So in there, you will have people from all horizons,
Whole
all
range.
ages, all backgrounds. And I think you will find passion in all tranches, of STEM professions. I think the value of having graduates is the, near peer role model,
Yes,
which is a concept I
absolutely.
think which is very interesting, because the closer you are to my experience, the more I will listen to you, the more I
Yeah,
will feel I can be you. So I
yeah,
think
more
there's a value
relatable.
in having, young professionals who've gone through an apprenticeship or an internship and then, went on to have a STEM career. But I think there's also a lot of value in having the experience as well. So I would say, it has to be a variety. And, I think my ideal would be to have a team of people who are very diverse within a company,
Yeah,
volunteering at the same time and showing, what value you bring as a team as well, with different people from different backgrounds. So I think that's key. And on your first point around going to places where nobody's going, I think that's the key. When I arrived in STEM learning, I saw that the STEM ambassador program was very universal, but I think there's a lot of value in targeting intervention. So that's
yeah,
something we've
okay.
started when I arrived, because otherwise you never break stereotypes. You never break my dad is an engineer, so he's going to come to my school. My mom is working in tech, so she's going to
Yeah,
come to my, Girl Scouts group. It has to be an effort for us to make sure we go where nobody else goes, or where it's more challenging to go. And we plan to do more in the next couple of years. We've secured funding for the STEM Ambassador program to have more targeted intervention where we want to have an impact and go out and try to find where it's difficult to go,
okay.
rather than, and all activities are good, but some are easier to organize.
Yes.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how
Yeah.
do you make the effort? So your point is absolutely valid. Otherwise, you just, you're in that circle where you feed your audience that is already going
Yeah,
to go in
primed.
STEM.
Yeah. I think my next question, maybe it can be answered with this future activity. How do you find, so I remember at our, so we don't do them anymore just because they're a lot of effort to do, but our careers fairs, we used to do Eco Engineers careers fairs. and we just found they became really time intensive, and what yeah, they were just there were a few reasons, and we've replaced them with alternative provision through
Yeah.
going to universities and focusing in on that transition from university to employment. But obviously, you need to go a lot earlier than that to
Yes.
activate interest. And so, at our careers fairs, we used to in the morning be open exclusively for schools from 10 to 12. And, we probably had, across the 50 careers fairs that we ran across 6 years, I think we had, I don't know, 150 or so schools, so thousands of students across those year groups. But one of the trends that I noticed 2 years into running the events, and this was a real interesting barrier that I was seeing play out. When we would, because of we're equal engineers, right? And we want to invite everyone and create equitable access. I specifically targeted specialist educational needs and or disability schools, so SEND schools, to invite them in the morning, smaller numbers, quieter environment, no music, lights not glaring, and exhibitors that are primed to, expect the profile that will come, and therefore how to best engage and support the interested parties. I thought our hand would be bitten off, at that opportunity. But what I found was just the first year we did it at least, all these responses being like, no, sorry, our pupils wouldn't be suitable for a career in STEM. No, 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 our pupils can't do that. No. And I found, so the gatekeepers, the secretaries, the people who were handling the inbound inquiries to the school were basically essentially filtering out the opportunity. So when I dig a bit deeper, I appreciated the diversity that's there in SEND provision and the different levels and scales, etc. So I appreciated some of the schools, fair enough, the individuals there just living independently will be a great achievement for them, and so it might just be a bit too much for them to come to an event. But equally, let them decide. Bring them along. Let them have a conversation. Let them find out. If anything, they then at least find out about careers in STEM. They get to see some
Yeah.
fancy, kit on the desk. It bugged me a lot, the fact that and this was before neurodiversity was really a term that was being used as much as it is now. So I was
Yeah.
just seeing in real time in my email inbox, trying to run these events, seeing barrier to get
Yeah.
in registered groups. But then the groups that did come, they were brilliant. You
Yeah.
know, like I've got anecdotal feedback from some clients that had, specific. I
Yeah.
think the Ministry of Defence had a challenge to like solve a puzzle. One of the pupils solved
Yeah.
it, 3 times faster than just
Yeah.
regular footfall.
And I think
So
it's been proven that neurodiversity, can be an asset in
yeah,
STEM, and sometimes, that actually helps you, excelling in these topics and in this field. So I think it's the challenges that you can see in schools that I think you're referring to, that and that's why I think an organization like STEM Learning and Equal Engines are so important, because you need
yeah,
to read, you need to understand the context in which we evolve. Industry wants this, but education challenges, especially today. So I think it's about understanding, how you can explain the value of doing something like this, and
yeah,
how you have understood, the problems, the limitations, but you still want, to show the impact it can have. And I think that's why we as STEM Learning also developed a third pillar to our activities, which is around student-facing activities, because as well
right,
they can decide. You can go through schools. You have to get the help of teachers to select people, but sometimes they also can find their own ways. So that's why we launched the Destination STEM program, which is basically
right,
to have more student-facing activities. We've launched a platform where they can have career advice, find videos. We also
brilliant.
offer skills like mentoring, that is done via text message because we know that's how teens, like to
Okay,
interact.
cool.
We've got STEM intensive camps to ensure that before they choose their GCSE and their careers, young people have an opportunity to spend 4 days, with STEM ambassadors, with experts, and really, infuse some fun in STEM.
Yeah.
So all of these destination STEM activities are directly for students because we felt the need to go through the teachers, through the schools and the STEM ambassadors sessions, but also directly to them to see, how we could help them with career advice.
Mm,
And we were going to try to make sure we do that as well. This career support in primary because,
yeah.
as you said, you have to do it very early. You've probably seen a lot of studies about young children from the age of 7
Yeah.
deciding what they don't want to do. And once
Yeah.
you've frozen that, stereotype, it's very difficult to, for instance, make a girl decide that STEM is for her when she's decided that she can't see anybody like her. She doesn't know what STEM is for, and she doesn't want to do
Yeah.
it. So if you don't start some sort of career advice from primary, it's very, you've got a leaky pipeline that keeps leaking. And
Yeah,
then
totally.
when you talk about skills at the end, post 16 stage, you've got a very small pool to choose from.
Yeah.
And I think today, I would say most jobs have a STEM dimension to them. So
Yeah.
imagine the number of employers fighting for a very small pool
Yeah.
of talents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always use the feed forward feedback analogy, using, because I'm an engineer by background, I love
Hmm.
using engineering idioms, but repurposed for
Yes.
when we talk about how we now need to do our interventions. I do also think, though, that we over engineer the theory of how we need to do the change.
Hmm.
And one of my critiques of funding and sometimes is it's just disproportionate the amount of work you need to do as a small business
Hmm.
or as a charity, to secure funds, developing theories of change and developing this and developing that and evidence this and evidence and that. I think it is important to understand your impact, but I think we just need to get on and do stuff as well, and accept a bit of testing and trialing, and if it fails, then what do we learn from it, and then try something else and just invest a bit and do. I think we spend a little bit too much time theorizing on what we ought to do rather than just being out there and doing.
Yeah.
um
What I see that myself, Mark, is when we talk about diversity in STEM,
uh,
a lot of organizations, very well intentioned, they want to tackle this issue because I think it's the number one thing you can do to improve that talent pool and widen it. But a lot of people talk a lot about the challenges
yeah.
and the why we got there, and I think it's definitely an area where if you started to act, and maybe focus all the events and the discussions on what are the tangible actions we can agree on
Yeah.
today to make sure that there's more diversity instead of what do I do differently myself, how can I convince my employer or my school to do something differently, and be very tangible about it. I think for me that's where I see what you're describing as more doing
Yeah.
than talking, because we know what the challenges are. We've explored them. We just need to get on with the tangible
Mm.
solutions to rectify the situation.
It's a really good point, isn't it? It's like it's speaking to the individuals in the sense of the multiple hats that they wear in life, as an engineer at work, as a parent at home, or as an uncle or an auntie to other young people in their life, and then thinking, well, what action can you take in that bit of your life, and do you have some privilege and power and role decision making that you could unlock something that then helps what you're trying to achieve in your personal life in your local community, but on a broader basis for the county within which you're doing business. And maybe it's actually then good for your business because you can I see I've been talking to some social value consultants on this, and I see so much I see such a gap right now between what comes out, and to your point when you said when your motivation for how the public purse can be used as a force for good to
Hmm.
unlock opportunity. all that right now is trying to be baked in through the Social Value Act, and um, what companies are doing through that, and what value they're unlocking through the monies that
Mm-hmm.
they receive for then the communities that they're going to build a new hospital or build a bridge or build a wind turbine or whatever. Um, I, I, I think there's a lack of understanding that within that social value language, that is where some of this stuff that we're discussing sits. And therefore, there's a perception that the funding of activities like the ones that our businesses offer needs to come from core centralized pots, which tend to be smaller compared to what they've won on specific projects. So I feel like if there was a bit of alignment nationally, I'd love to have a session where we get a map of the UK, we chunk it up, we look at each region, we layer onto it what is the active industry in each region, what are the unique skills that are needed going forward in each region.
Yeah.
Okay, next layer down, what is the STEM ambassador distribution through your network
Mm.
of employers and role models and what have you.
Mm.
Um, and then look at like the business pipeline of opportunities of industry development. What are the skills needs that are going to be there?
Yeah.
And then we get down to the day-to-day interactions, and we almost like, I wonder if there's a way to have like a big AI program that then tells you like what engagement activity needs to happen in what postcodes.
Yeah.
um
So
you
I think
know
what you're referring to, Mark, is very interesting because for us, social value is an interesting vehicle, and it's a currency. So we are very keen to use it, and we say that we have measured through the Green Book methodology of the UK government that every pound spent in STEM learning
huh?
generates £26 in social value.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it gives you a measure of the impact because of the all the consequences and impact you have on the students, the teacher, their
Yeah.
community around them, the fact that they're going to increase their earnings, the students if they choose a STEM career, this safety of their jobs, etc. So for us, it's a very important currency. And I would say for us, the place-based engagement is going to be vital in this social value strategy. I think
Yeah.
from February, any organization that bids for public money will have to talk about the social value they generate. And for us, we see that as an opportunity to have a place-based strategy where you are
Hmm.
going to need to talk about how you really enhance the lives of your communities around a wind turbine, around a new bridge or a new water facility. So that
Yeah.
would allow us to do a place-based approach, and also maybe layer that with the local skills mapping that is
Yes.
happening. And I think working with mayors, working with local skills partnerships, local authorities where they have a say, I think would be very important. So for us, the social value will be an opportunity to work in a place-based environment. And it's very interesting the way you talk about the map and the cold spots, because we work with the Ministry of Defense, because
Okay.
they're extremely supportive in terms of developing STEM, university,
Yeah.
not for you to join the army, but in general for you to develop a love of STEM. And they've started to look at a map to see where their own intervention in STEMs is going. Is it around their bases
Hmm.
or other places? And their intention is to create that map to go where they identify cold spots. So a lot
Mm.
of people are thinking about that, and I think social value will be conducive to a more place-based approach, because you will have to go around your project and demonstrate what is the social value you generate around the area where you are going to be supporting with infrastructure, with
Mm.
internet connection, whatever.
It's exciting. I'm actually now based in Brooklyn in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Relocated recently, and so yeah, I'm very interested to see what lies here, and what learnings can I bring from what we do in the United
Yes.
Kingdom over to here, and even in whatever the political headwinds are ahead of us with diversity and inclusion and equity and what is included and not included, I think it'll go in a different direction to the way where the UK is. Um, but we're still going to need engineers and we're still going to need people, So we can't stop doing these sort of inspiration opportunities, events, projects. So I
And
don't
as you
know.
say, I can't see a world where you won't need a STEM learning, you won't need an equal engineers. It is something that is not debatable. It's how you do it, who funds it, how much industry steps in, because there will always be a need. When you look at the statistics, 173,000 engineers and STEM skilled professionals will be needed in the
Yeah.
UK every year, and the UK economy loses 1.5 billion pounds
Yeah.
every year
All right.
because of
Okay.
the skills gap. It's so we need to think about how we tackle that problem, but by doing and
Yeah.
making sure that we do sustained engagement. Because if you inspire somebody from the age of 7, you follow them. My dream is to have STEM learning cohorts
Yeah.
together, with the people who fund us, to make sure you can follow somebody. They've got a
Ah,
badge.
like
And
longitudinal kind of. Yeah.
exactly, that because you engage with them, with STEM ambassadors from the age of 7, they went on to a competition to build a satellite with a can. Then they went on to work in space. So we've got examples already of that, but we need many more.
Oh, I love that. Well, I mean, the organization's only 20 years old. So, that 7-year-old that you inspired in 20, oh God, do my maths, 2004, is now out
Yes.
there,
Yes,
early.
we had heard stories. Ideja, for instance, a young student who heard a woman who was becoming a STEM ambassador working in biology that she found awe inspiring, and she decided to study biology. And now she's at university in Edinburgh and is
Brilliant.
studying biology, and is also launching a AI company to ed tech companies to use AI better. And she said this was the transformational moment. This was when I
Wow.
decided that I could do biology as well.
Yeah.
And it's incredible
It
to know
gives you
that you can
goosebumps, doesn't
you
it?
can
Yeah.
transform the lives of young people by
Yeah.
putting role models in front, by nurturing their science capital again and again.
With all the, with what you just described as well, with the how to orchestrate the change, STEM learning's got the right person at the helm, because it must be so interesting bringing in your public affairs and policy and politics
Yes,
experience to influence that strategy and figure out that pathway forward. Are you
yeah.
finding are you finding like you're able to pull on strengths and skills that you've got from other parts of your career now in this leadership role that you're in?
Definitely. I would say communication is a big one, because you need to articulate very clearly, what your vision is and the impact you have and the interrelationship between things. So I think communication came in very handy, although there are challenges because, again, funding is becoming sparse. So you need to, double down and find your voice. But I think that's a great one. Another one I take from my career in public affairs and different fields is the relationships.
Yeah,
It's all about human people. It's all about
yeah, yeah,
creating this relationship with others. And I think that I came from organizations and jobs where I had to do that. And you have to help each other, understand each other, so the relationships are key. I think another skill for me is the fast learning, being I'm a constant learner, I'm a fast learner, because you have to
yeah,
adapt. I've had to work in different fields, different countries, different languages, and I had to adapt quickly. And I think it's something that, as leaders, we have to have in the future, because change is only going to accelerate.
yeah, yeah,
I'm witnessing a change in the demands on our employees, on how fast we need to adapt. And I think this resilience, this fast learning is key, I think. And the last one for me is emotional intelligence. You need to put yourself in the other person's shoes. You need to understand,
yeah,
how do they feel at this moment? What do they need? How do we come to an agreement together?
yeah. Oh, completely. Wow, wow. Great advice there. Okay, quick fire questions. Are you ready for them?
Yes.
Okay. So, what's the most rewarding part of your job right now?
I think it's when I hear the stories, these young people, who've decided to take up a career in STEM. For me, that's the best thing. We had somebody called Ashna Bui, who came from a school where there were a lot of challenges, and she came on to a research placement at the Oxford Scientific Museum. And when she did that, she also learned about a condition that impaired her vision. And so she found this placement transformational and went on to study at Imperial College.
All right.
And now wants to work in healthcare to find a solution, a treatment for our condition. And it's so humbling to hear her story and to know that STEM learning has been instrumental in helping her find a passion and build a resilience. And just for moments like that, you just want to do it every day.
Absolutely.
Every day.
Okay. Tea or coffee?
Tea. I've become a tea lover. I used to drink coffee, but when I moved to the UK, there was no going back.
What book has influenced your leadership style the most?
I think start with the why.
Start with why. Simon Sinek. Morning person or night owl?
Morning, definitely.
What's the one leadership skill you think everyone should work on?
Listening skills.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Don't be afraid. Don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. Just find out for yourself.
If you could have dinner with any innovator, STEM professional, past or present, who would it be?
Marie Curie.
What's your favourite thing to do to unwind after a long day?
Going for a run, I think, and spending time with my kids.
What's the most exciting STEM project you're currently working on?
There's so many that, it's difficult to choose. But I would say starting the new year and working with companies to make sure we do more work placement, because a lot of employers are wanting people with work-based skills, and we need more to make sure young people and industry find what they need.
What's the one thing you think will revolutionise STEM education in the next decade?
Artificial intelligence.
And finally, what's one habit you've developed that has been key to your success?
I think keep your words. If you say you are going to do something, do it. And if you say what you're going to do, it's easier to keep your word as well.
That's great advice. Well, thank you very much. I've really, really enjoyed our chat today.
It was fantastic.
If people want to get in touch with you, find out more about your work, what you do, connect, find out more about STEM learning, how do they do that?
So they can go on our website, stem.org.uk, and to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn, so please feel free to drop me a message.
Fabulous.
I'm delighted to work with people, who are on the same wavelength.
Wonderful. Oh, wavelength. Love that. Good STEM word there. We'll put those links in the show notes as well.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Séverine. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Safe Leader podcast, uncovering the diversity story behind leading figures championing change to make our world a better place. If you have enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the Safe Leader podcast on your podcast platform of choice and get notified when a new episode goes live. Did you know that we also offer a full transcript on each of our podcast episodes? Check out my website, McBride-Wright.com. Here, you can also explore the training, coaching, and keynote speaking services I offer. And whilst you're there, why not join the Safe Leader community by subscribing to the Safe Leader Insights mailing list? Thank you for listening, and please come back and join us on a future episode.